For centuries, they were the terror of Europe, just erupting from the cold fringes of the known world in these incredible dragon-headed ships. They were raiders, sure, but they were also traders, explorers, and conquerors. This is the story of the Viking Age. But you have to wonder, right? How did they actually do it? How did this, scattered collection of tribes from the very edge of the continent come to dominate the seas, sack Europe's greatest cities, and even discover new worlds? The answer, you'll see, isn't just about raw brutality. It's a story of geography, amazing technology, and a totally revolutionary way of seeing the world. So to really understand the Vikings, you first have to understand where they came from. Their story doesn't begin with a sword or an axe. It begins with geography. It begins with the sea. Okay, so picture this. Before the Viking Age, Scandinavia was basically a world apart, way out on the fringes, largely untouched by the whole Roman Empire thing. It was this rugged, tough landscape of dense forests, deep fjords, and just countless islands. Trying to travel over land was an absolute nightmare. So what did that mean? Well, for communication, for trade, for life itself, these communities were all naturally facing the water. To them, the sea wasn't some scary barrier, it was their highway. And on that highway, they had a vehicle that was, frankly, a game changer. By the 8th century, Norse shipwrights had pretty much perfected the clinker-built vessel. Now, the secret was all in the overlapping planks of the hull. This technique created a ship that was incredibly flexible and light, so light you could actually haul it over land, yet it was strong enough to survive the brutal North Atlantic. It was nothing short of a technological masterpiece. And the pinnacle of this technology? The longship. I mean, just imagine it. The biggest one stretched up to 30 meters, powered by both sail and oar, and could carry a crew of nearly 100 warriors. But here's the kicker, the real genius of it. It's shallow draft. This meant it could tear across the open ocean and then just keep going, right up shallow rivers, striking deep into the heart of a kingdom where absolutely no one expected an attack by sea. But here's the thing, these ships weren't just for war. Scandinavian mariners had already built these huge trade networks. See, in their world of competing local chieftains, raiding was just, it was a faster, more opportunistic form of trade. It was a quick way to get wealth, to build your reputation, and to make sure your followers stayed loyal. In the Viking mind, trading and raiding, they were really just two sides of the same coin. And so, with this powerful combination of incredible skill on the water and just this fierce, raw ambition, the Northmen were about to unleash themselves on a completely unsuspecting Europe. The age of the raid had begun. Let me paint you a picture. The year is 793. Off the northeast coast of England, there's this island monastery called Lindisfarne. It's a famous center of Christian learning, it's rich, it's revered, and it is utterly, completely undefended. To a Viking longship suddenly appearing over the horizon, it was the perfect target. Can you imagine hearing that for the first time? The attack sent shockwaves of pure horror through the Christian world. It wasn't just a robbery, it was a desecration, a violation of a holy place by so-called barbarians. But for the Vikings, the logic was brutal and undeniable. These isolated, treasure-filled monasteries, they were just easy pickings. And Lindisfarne, that set a precedent. And after that, the attacks escalated with terrifying speed. What started as seasonal raids on coastal monasteries soon became these incredibly ambitious assaults deep inland. In 845, a fleet of 120 longships sailed right up the Seine and sacked Paris itself. Then, around 850, a really crucial shift happened. For the very first time, a Viking army stayed through the winter in England, establishing a permanent year-round threat. And this shift, from being seasonal raiders to becoming a permanent presence, it marked a profound change in what the Vikings wanted. They were no longer satisfied with just hit-and-run plunder anymore. In the autumn of 865, a massive Norse fleet landed in England. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle had a name for it, the Great Heathen Army, and their objective was crystal clear, and frankly, terrifyingly new. They didn't come for treasure to take back home. They came for land to call their own. They came to conquer. This was a fundamental evolution. I mean, think about it. The raider was seasonal, right? Focused on grabbing wealth you could carry and using hit-and-run tactics. The settler, though, was permanent. They were focused on land, and they were fighting for total conquest. This new kind of war was about to change the face of England forever.
After years and years of brutal fighting, a peace treaty with the Anglo-Saxon king Alfred the Great basically allowed the Vikings to keep a huge chunk of the territory they'd already conquered. This whole region became known as the Danelaw. And this wasn't just a military occupation, it was a massive demographic shift. Thousands of Scandinavian settlers poured in, built farms, and completely transformed the culture of the area.
But the Vikings' ambitions weren't just limited to England and the West. Not at all. At the exact same time, another wave of expansion was pushing east, following the great rivers deep into what was, for them, a whole new world. Swedish Vikings, who came to be known as Varangians, used the river systems of Eastern Europe to forge this incredible trade route. It connected the Baltic Sea all the way down to the Black and Caspian Seas. They were trading things like furs and honey for silver and luxury goods from the Byzantine Empire, and even from as far away as Baghdad. And along the way, they established powerful states like the one that would become the Kievan Rus. Of course, their incredible skill in battle eventually brought them into contact with the wealthiest, most powerful city on Earth, Constantinople. And out of this meeting, the legendary Varangian Guard was born. This was an elite imperial bodyguard made up almost entirely of Norsemen, and they became famous across the known world for their unbreakable loyalty and their absolute ferocity in a fight. Now, all this incredible outward expansion, all this contact with new cultures, it inevitably brought change back to the Scandinavian homelands. As Vikings returned with new wealth, new ideas, and yes, a new religion, their own world began to completely transform from within. And this created a massive clash of worldviews. You had the Old Norse paganism, with gods like Odin and Thor, which really reflected a decentralized world of local chieftains and clans. And then you had Christianity, which offered this radical alternative: one God, one church, and a powerful model for centralized kings to consolidate their power. This wasn't just a religious squabble, it was a period of huge social and political upheaval. And as you might guess, this push for royal power and Christianization wasn't exactly welcomed by everybody. In Norway, a lot of fiercely independent chieftains basically said, "No thanks," and chose to leave rather than submit to a king. And this resistance actually fueled one last, incredible wave of westward expansion. First to the uninhabited shores of Iceland in the 870s, then to Greenland under Eric the Red, and finally, around the year 1000, to the coast of North America. By the time the new millennium rolled around, the Viking Age had reached its absolute apex. But the very forces of change and assimilation that they had helped set in motion would ultimately bring their era to a dramatic close. The year is 1066. The King of England, Edward the Confessor, has died without an heir. The throne is up for grabs. And this single year, 1066, is going to become the symbolic, thunderous end of the Viking Age. So, 3 men claimed the crown. You had Harold Godwinson, the chosen English successor. Then there was Harald Hardrada, the fearsome king of Norway, a true Viking king, launching the last great Viking invasion. And then you had William, Duke of Normandy, a land settled by Vikings generations ago, who had now become French-speaking Normans. It was an epic 3-way showdown. In the end, the Norwegian king, Hardrada, was defeated and killed at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. But just weeks later, the new English king, Godwinson, was himself defeated and killed by William at the Battle of Hastings. The Viking Age ended not with a whimper, but with this thunderous clash of kings. And yet, their legacy is all around us, in our language, with words like sky, egg, and take, and in countless place names. They didn't really disappear. They assimilated, they were absorbed, and they ultimately became part of the very cultures they had once terrorized. Which leaves us with a final question. Were they just savage barbarians who, as that monk wrote, poured out the blood of saints? Or were they also explorers, innovators, and yes, nation builders, whose fierce energy helped forge the modern world? The answer, just like their history, is far more complex and far more interesting than the legend.